Hello everyone, Maurice and welcome to Things Invest. Talk about investing, finance, versus development. For today's very early times only, the investment I'm going to talk about today would be Tesla, ticker TSLA. So with respect to the Tesla earnings calls, expected to debut after market hour today, and I believe the timing for that is going to be happening around 5 p.m. on Eastern time. In respect to the current price point for Tesla is currently up about 3.14%, trading around like the $663, kind of testing the $669 level, which is a psychological resistance level we've identified in the technical analysis. So what do we know so far, right? What's the predictions for Tesla earnings call and how is that going to reflect on a price level going forward, right? What do we know so far, right? And I've kind of captured 6 specific factors that we have to identify, right? Firstly, we know that Q2 delivery is definitely going to be exceeding Wall Street expectations. So I believe that that's already been spread out into the media expectation. We are aware of that Q2 earnings with respect to just the top line delivery number, right? However, there are other 5 factors that we identified so far that are, unknown. Firstly speaking, with respect to just the delivery number, with respect to the operating expense, or the capital expenditure that the company has endured so far, during this pandemic, how has that been, hindering the profit margin so far, right? That's something that is an unknown factor that we still need to understand. And respect to the B Word Summit, right, per obviously Elon Musk's depictions around the crypto holding, he's currently invested personally into Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Dogecoin. How would that reflect into the Tesla balance sheets, right? We know that space is currently holding or accepting Dogecoin already. So how is that going to reflect into Tesla's balance sheet? Is it more of a diversified portfolio into crypto assets in the holding? Or are we just going to see more additional Bitcoin holding? Or are we seeing an introduction of Ethereum as well? So something we have to understand, right? Another thing would be with respect to the Chinese tension that we're currently cultivating between U.S. and China. That's something that has been dragging on for quite some time now, right? And knowing the fact that Tesla has such large Chinese exposure with their Gigafactory, obviously in Shanghai, and obviously a lot of customers from China as well. How is that hindering, or the opposite side of the spectrum, affecting, obviously Tesla's price point going forward, right? And then on top of the other factor with respect to chip shortage, which is hindering the global macro sector of semiconducting, technological hardware specifically, and obviously some correlations to software companies. And obviously Tesla is a car manufacturer that is building computers, or computer cars, if you may, right, with their self-driving technology. Obviously, with that shortage, will subsequently hinder the supply with respect to the demand that we are currently having, just overwhelming demand across the spectrum, right? And then also other things with respect to more U.S. related, the inflationary pressure, right? How is that going to be hindering, the margin going forward with respect to the lack of or cut off of the monetary circulations that we've been sustaining because of the quantitative easing plan that we've been experiencing for a year and a half so far, right? So with respect to the tapering or the tightening, how is that going to hinder the margin or the top line growth going forward, right? And lastly, it's more of a global competition, right? We know that Tesla is at the forefront of being the biggest player for EV vehicles going forward, right? But with respect to the management team, right, how are they maneuvering or mitigating that global competitions going forward with emergence of Neo, even Ford, um, you know, Xpeng, all of those Chinese players as well. It seems like every vehicle makers or car makers or automakers, if you may, are trying to get a piece of the pie of EV. So with respect to that diversification going forward, how is Tesla going to sustain that dominance in the market perspective, right? So I'm going to go through a technical analysis to see with respect to these factors that I've identified. So right, so moving on to the technical analysis for Tesla, ticker TSLA, I'm recording was up 12:08 p.m. on Eastern time. Current trading at like the $665 level, up about 3.35%. And we're basically about 5 hours away from the earnings call, which is going to happen at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. I don't know. It changes sometimes. It's sometimes like 5 p.m., sometimes 6 p.m., but it's going to happen around that time. And based on the investment sentiment so far across the market, we're definitely seeing some green pressure. I think we are anticipating some sort of a surge coming up, knowing the fact that we're kind of sitting on a sideways fashion, right? Like if you look at it, we have been sitting around like this, the frame between 625 to 664 ever since like basically June 23rd, all the way here, right? We tried to test the 700 at one point, but we couldn't get there, but we're kind of oscillating on a sideways fashion, right? And as you can see, we were there basically a while back too, on April. But because of the negative FOMC meeting, the CPI report, and obviously the inflationary pressure, and with respect to the chip shortage, all of that stuff, kind of hinder, right? Obviously, all the EV stocks, but also with respect to any stocks that have any Chinese ties to it, right? So we hit all the way down to this $546 level, reverse back up to test the 625, which is a resistance level we've identified so far, and then hit back down to a 575, kind of like forming a bottom, and then kind of huff up in a way because of the positive outlook of the economy going forward, right? And ever since that, we kind of oscillate on a sideways fashion, testing the $625 level, several times now, right? Once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times, right? And we are forming some sort of a leap up right now, obviously because of the anticipatory pressure from the B-Work Summit, and obviously with respect to the ties to Bitcoin, and obviously the anticipation that the earnings for Q2 delivery is going to beat the Wall Street expectation, which is something we know already. However, with respect to the 5 other factors we've identified so far, right? And just to remind you, like the B-Work crypto exposure, number one, do they hold Ethereum? Are they adding more Bitcoin to exposure? Chip shortage, Chinese tension, inflationary pressure, global competitions, right? These 5 things that we still have unknown of, right? So if we have a very positive sentiment, and I believe we should be, because the sector rotation should be happening for a lot of hedge funds going forward, that I think we should be leaping up, to the next level, right? And the next level that we'll leap up to from the current level of 665, again, where we broke the 625 and we leaped up, right? And we are currently at the 665, we will get all the way to the 690, right? And that's the next level. If we break through the 690 and we hover more, we'll go all the way to 710. That's just a matter of like how the resistance levels perform historically, right? We don't ever hover between the levels. We either go all the way to one side of the spectrum or go down all the way side of the spectrum, right? And if we do have a negative one, which I don't foresee that to be the case, but who knows, right? And depending on the verbiage that we get from the management team, right, we'll crash all the way back down to 625, and potentially even hit the below the 625 if we crack through the 625, depending on the selling pressure, because we know the FOMC meeting is tomorrow. That if we hear anything about inflations or that the global competition is squeezing in, chip shortage is worsening until 2023, based on the recent news that we've heard so far, we get all the way down to the 595. Absolutely, absolutely, because that's just one resistance level. To crack down to get there, very likely, and that's about $100 drop from here, right? Which is a pretty sizable drop, right? But I think that should be it. I don't think we will actually get to 575 if we have a negative side of the spectrum. And also on top of the fact that I think we should see some bullish pressure because of the curvature that we're forming. And also on top of our side is kind of more of a neutral zone. We're not overbought, we're not oversold either. We're leaning more toward neutral level. So that gives me comfort that we should be seeing some leap up today. So hopefully this is helpful into how I'm thinking about this going forward, right? And these are the frames that you want to follow going forward. All right, just to go through the technical analysis in a more high-level perspective. Again, if we leap down today, we have some selling pressure. We get down to 625 as a first level consolidation. But if we have a more of a worsened level of depictions from management team, or a more of a negative foreshadow on the economical outlook and how that's going to correlate with Tesla's going forward, reaching the 605 to hits all the way to this, I think the lowest would be 575 that we could potentially get there, knowing the fact that that's a level of the bottoms that we've been forming for basically a month and a half so far, right? And respect to corporate adoption, $950, 52% upside if you buy at the 625. One times your money from here. Alright, so this is for their respect my technical analysis on Tesla, ticker TSLA. Hopefully this is helpful into giving you that clarity, that structure on how you're going to be approaching earnings for Tesla later today. Feel free to ask me any questions if you have any questions, or if you want me to clarify something more specific for you. I'm available, so feel free to reach out to me on the comment section. And yeah, really appreciate you guys for dropping by and being such diligent investors on listening to me on a daily basis. I really appreciate that. Stay tuned for next month. Take care. Bye.